52 Spurgeon, Stories for Children, Book 3, A Fly on the Nose, and 51 other great stories, written by Tony Hunter. Psalms 119, verse 130. The entrance of your words gives light. It gives understanding to the simple. Occasionally, you meet some funny people in churches. Not in the one you go to, I'm sure. But I want to tell you about a rather strange man one speaker had in his congregation. This speaker later became the pastor of a church in Glasgow in Scotland. But early on in his preaching career, as a young man, he went to a particular church to take the service. He looked round the congregation and saw one man sitting near the front doing something very strange. This man was one of the officers of the church, and you'd never guess what he was doing. He sat there with his fingers in his ears. I'm sure I don't know why he did this. I suppose that he just didn't like the young preacher and didn't want to hear what he had to say. I'll tell you a little later about someone who wanted to hear preaching, but couldn't because he was deaf. This man had the opposite problem. He could hear but didn't want to. What could the preacher do? I don't know what I'd do in that situation, and this young preacher didn't know what to do either. Anyway, he carried on with the service while the man sat there with his ears stuffed with his fingers. Later on, the young man told Spurgeon about this strange incident. He wondered if Spurgeon had any advice to give him if he found himself in a similar situation, not that he was likely to. He said, "There was a nice thing for a young preacher. What would you have done, Mr. Spurgeon?" "I should have prayed," began Spurgeon, and the young man put a solemn look on his face because he was expecting something very spiritual. "Well, what do you think that Spurgeon would have prayed?" "Yes," he said, "I should have prayed that a fly might have landed on his nose." If Spurgeon had been the preacher and his prayer had been answered, I'm sure that you can work out what would have happened. You don't need to put fingers in your ears not to hear, though, do you? If you don't concentrate on what is being said, you won't hear and understand. God's voice in the Bible is the most important voice to listen to. The psalmist in the longest psalm said this, "The entrance of your words gives light. It gives understanding to the simple." Psalms 119, verse 130. If God's word is to enter your heart, your ears must be open, and your heart too.